Introduction. He had known many previous incarnations, and then some. He had walked the earth as Nostradamus, Uther Pendragon, Count Cagliostro, and Rodrigo Borgia, although probably not in that order. He spoke 17 languages, played darts with the Dalai Lama, and shared his sleeping bag with Rasputin, Albert Einstein, Lawrence of Arabia, and George Formby. He was worshipped as a god by an East Acton cargo cult, and once scaled Everest in a smoking jacket and +4s to win a bet with Oscar Wilde. He travelled to Venus in the company of George Adamski, reinvented the ocarina, and was burned in effigy by the Chiswick Townswomen's Guild. He was an expert swordsman, a gourmet chef, a world traveller, poet, painter, stigmatist, guru to gurus, and hater of Bud Abbott. He could open a tin of sardines with his teeth, strike a swan vestas on his chin, rope steers, drive a steam locomotive, and hum all the works of Gilbert and Sullivan without becoming confused or breaking down in tears. He won a first at Oxford, squandered 3 fortunes, made love to 1,000 women, imbibed strange drugs, sold his soul for rock and roll, almost pipped Einstein for the Nobel Prize, was barred from every Chinese noodle parlour in West London, and died penniless at a Hastings boarding house in his 90th year. His name was Hugo Artemis Solon Saturnicus Reginald Arthur Rune, and he was never bored. He penned more than 8 million words. His autohagiography, The Most Amazing Man Who Ever Lived, chronicles the life of an individual who shunned the everyday, scorned the laws of ordinary man, laughed in the face of convention, reinvented the ocarina, and hated Bud Abbott. He was a character in an age of characters, an exaggerated shadow cast in the fashionable places of his day, the confidant of kings and criminals, popes and prize fighters, lighthouse keepers and lingerie salesmen, boffins and baggers. Strangely enough, hardly anyone remembers him today. His greatest work, the Book of Ultimate Truths, has long ago vanished from the bookshelves. The British Library denies all knowledge of it. Smiths can't get it in, and a recent privately printed edition turned out to be an elaborate hoax, perpetrated by a certain Sir John Rimmer, a bogus biographer of Rune, now living as a tax exile in California. The Book of Ultimate Truths was Rune's magnum opus, an encyclopedia of his accumulated wisdom. Within it, the master explains, in terms understandable to the layman, exactly what life is really all about. Why there are always 2 small screws left over when you reassemble that broken toaster, where all the yellow-handled screwdrivers go to. Why supermarket trolleys congregate beneath canal bridges. How the thermos flask knows what to keep hot and what to keep cold. Why the aspirin is only guessing. Where all the road comes from and where they all go to afterwards, and why it's always right where you're driving. The myth of dry cleaning, dog-turd geomancy, the truth about the forbidden zones and the London A to Z, and much more. Throughout his colourful life, the forces of darkness sought constantly to prevent Rune from revealing his ultimate truths. Satanic agencies plagued him in many human forms. Cuckolded husbands, the original inventor of the ocarina, the Chiswick Townswomen's Guild, and the Bud Abbott Appreciation Society, to mention but a few. Added to these were landlords and lodging house keepers, the proprietors of West London Chinese noodle parlours, milkmen, tailors, shoemakers, manufacturers of magical accoutrements, travel agents, and vintners, all labouring under what Rune referred to as the curious misconception that a master should pay his bills as do the humble folk. But although under constant threat of assassination or litigation, Hugo Rune was never afraid to speak out, name names, and point the finger of accusation. His modest aim was to increase mankind's knowledge and single-handedly bring about world peace. The Book of Ultimate Truths must be republished for all our sakes. Peace Day celebrations. Being too young to remember Peace Day, Cornelius Murphy asked his Uncle Brian to tell him all about it. "Well, son," said the uncle, settling himself on the box ottoman and sucking life into his pipe, "what would you like to know?" "Were there flags?" Cornelius asked. "Flags?" The uncle puffed upon his ancient meerschaum. "Flags there were, son, flags of every shape and hue. The whole of Sprite Street was decked out like a stamp album. There were Union Jacks galore, and your aunt and me made bunting from lengths of toilet roll and hung it out the windows. And were there cakes? Cornelius asked. Cakes, I'll say there were cakes. Old Ma Riley made a cake like Buckingham Palace, and the girls from the steam laundry baked buns like victory signs, and battleships and lions and tigers. I even recall an unsliced brown, fashioned after the manner of Winston Churchill's cigar. Gosh! Cornelius hugged his knees. And dancing, Uncle Brian, did people dance? Dance! The uncle waved his pipe in the air. Dance we did, son. We danced all night. 2 brass bands came down from the colliery, bands with horns and trumpets and big bass drums. We danced until our feet were sore, and then we danced again. He sat back as if even the memory exhausted him. And were there toads, Uncle Brian? For Cornelius had run out of questions and interest at exactly the same moment. Toads? Asked the uncle. I'll say there were toads. Toads as big as dogs, dancing and singing and playing the bagpipes. It was the first time Cornelius had met with insanity, and being only a small child, he was favourably impressed.